Well, hello. Today we're going to add to our cozy winter headwear collection. We're going to add a headband to our collection of patterns and a new neck warmer, the tubular shaped neck warmer, which you can trim in all sorts of interesting ways, or add an elastic and a toggle so you can tighten it around your face when it gets cold and blustery outside. They're very easy to make. This is a beginner level sewing pattern. Each piece is just one rectangular shape. So come on inside. I'm going to teach you how to make a cozy, warm winter headband and a lovely, comfortable tubular neck warmer that you can tighten when it gets cold outside. So it all starts with the pattern, and here we have our neck warmer pattern. We're going to cut a piece of polar fleece that's 26 inches wide on the stretch and 14 inches in length. And in centimeters, that's 66.5 centimeters wide by 35.5 centimeters deep. And we're going to sew the back seam together, right sides together. And what we usually do to make that seam lovely is then we will top stitch each raw edge down beside the seam. So we have that double seam on the outside, but a flat seam on the inside. So I'm just pinning my piece together, and I'm using a seam of about 3/8 of an inch. And I will be using a seam of 3/8 of an inch for both pieces in this project. And I backstitch at the top and at the bottom of that seam. And now I'm just gonna push it flat with my fingers and turn it down so that I'm working from the right side or the outside, and also on either side of that seam, just the width of my half of my presser foot. And it'll look like a double stitch, but it will make the seam nice and flat and comfortable. Now, if you have a serger, what I recommend doing is doing a serged edge on both ends of the tube, and that's what I'm going to do next because I have a serger. If you don't, not to worry, fleece does not fray. And there you can see my lovely top stitching, which is nice and decorative too on the outside. So now that I have my two raw edges serged, which just finishes them off nicely, because I have a business, I like to do that with fleece, just finish the edges with a serge. I'm going to now make a cuff, and my cuff is going to be 4 inches deep or 10 centimeters deep, and I'll use my tape measure just to check to make sure. But because I'm using a print that has a definite linear pattern, it makes it pretty easy just to pick sort of a line in the print to make my fold on. If you're a beginner sewer, I would recommend that you pick something like a plaid because it will be helpful. And just ask the people that are working at the fabric store when you're getting your fleece just to check to make sure that the print of the fleece is printed properly so that it's not all wonky and on an angle. And I'm just going to clip that seam in place, and I'll use a few pins too to help keep it in place, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sew 4 inches down, and I'm going to sew right on top of that serge that I've made, and I'll have a sewing line that's 4 inches down all the way around, just holding that cuff in place. All the way around. And I'll just use the pins a little bit closer to where I'm going to sew just to help keep that flat. Now I'm turning it so that I'll be working from the inside. And I'm just going to sew carefully all the way around. So if you don't have a serge edge, you're just going to sew close to the edge so you're catching both layers. All right, so now I've got that seam made, and I can stop here if I want to. And you'll find too that you could also add a hem to the bottom at this point as well. I'm going to add a casing for elastic. I'm going to show you how to do that. And I recommend that you use a round elastic like a shock cord and a toggle so that you can adjust the tightness around your face and neck. So I'm going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth over that back seam where they intersect. And then I'm going to go around all the way, and I'm working about an inch away from the fold or 2.5 centimeters away from the fold at the top. And when I'm finished, I'm going to have an elastic casing, and to get at the casing, I'm going to open up that gap between the top edge and that casing seam right along the back seam. So on either side of my opening, it's going to be top stitched down, but it's a beautiful spot just to add some elastic. So it's nice and strong. So using my handy bodkin, I'm going to insert the elastic, and I like this type of closing for the neck warmer because it means that you can adjust the fit around your face. In Canada, it gets very cold, so when it is very cold, you can pull this right up and use your toggle to tighten it. So you just feel like it's cutting out the wind and the cold from your nose and your mouth. And also, if we have that nasty virus this winter again, you know, you can pull it up over your nose and mouth as well and have a little bit more security with a bit of a closer fit to your face. And I just tie a double knot at the end of each piece of elastic so that it won't fall back through the toggle. And I've left sort of long ends, but you can definitely do your ends closer to the toggle. So I'm just trimming off the ends now. And so that's one way to finish this neck warmer. And if you want to, you could hem it as well. You'll find the bottom sort of tucks nicely up inside itself though, and without you doing a hem. Now I'm going to do another option, and we did this last week in our more traditional bandana shaped neck warmer. We're going to add a tie, and we'll place it about 2.5 inches down from the top edge, or 6 centimeters. And then I'm going to sew it on with about a 6-inch long or 10 centimeter long straight seam. And while I'm sewing it, I'm going to pull on that piece of fleece, which, by the way, is about 26 inches to 30 inches long, depending on my offcut. It's just a piece that's left over from cutting out the neck warmer. And it's cut on the stretch as well. As you can see, it sort of wants to roll as I'm pulling it. So I'm going to sew my seam right in the center of that roll. And I'm going to pull it, because by pulling it, I'm giving it some tension, and it's going to want to, you know, close a lot easier and nicely. It'll make a nice fold when it closes. And I'm about 2.5 inches or more, and I'd say maybe 7 centimeters down from the top. But it's a personal thing. You put it where you'd like. And there's one that's finished. And I can just tie the ends in a bow when I have it tight around my neck. And it looks nice too, with the ends just sort of hanging down inside your coat. It's a very simple way to make a neck warmer have a loose or a tight fit. And it pleats nicely too, doesn't it? So I'm sewing on my tie. And now I am adding a button that I have, and I painted it black. It was made out of a coconut shell. But if you have some big buttons lying around your studio, you could definitely thread one right up to the beginning of where the piece is sewn on to the neck warmer. And because that piece of fleece is about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters deep or thick, you'll find the tension just holds it right in place. And then you can use the other end to just sort of wrap around. You can put some beads on the end and tie the ends into a knot. Just by using some beads that you may have in your studio or in your sewing room, just to give those ties a little bit of weight and a little bit of pizzazz. And tying a knot at the end keeps the bead in place. There's all sorts of possibilities. All sorts of possibilities. And here are 3. Yay. They're all great. Well, I'll have to tell you that in my 36-year career, I've probably made thousands and thousands of headbands. So here's our basic headband pattern. Carrying on with the very theme that we started this channel with, which was a flurry of headband lessons. So here's your winter headband. So we have a beautiful headband pattern that's 22 inches long or 56 centimeters by 7 inches deep or 18 centimeters. This is based on an average woman's head. I'm just sewing the back seam, but I'm going to tell you that if your head is a different size than 22.5, which is average woman, so this band is actually a 1/2 inch shorter than the average head size. So just take a 1/2 inch off of your head size and that's your length. You can play with the depth. If you have a head that's a lot bigger than 22.5 inches, then you might want to add a 1/2 inch to the depth. I'm doing my top stitching on the back seam. There's my double line of top stitching and my seam is flat, which makes it more comfortable. And now I'm going to close it the way we closed all of our summer headbands. And there's lots of summer headband projects on this channel, or indoor headband or stretchy knit headband projects. So what we've done is we've put the back seam of the headband with the right side facing up, and we've put the rest of the headband on top of that, and then we've brought the 2 seam edges up to meet each other, and now we're sewing along that long raw edge, and we have sort of like a burrito or a headband sandwich that the outside, wrong side, is sandwiching all of the headband inside, and as we sew, we're pulling out more to free up and keep sewing along that seam. We're going to leave a little hole, a little gap, to pull the right side of the piece out, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. Now, if you've been on this channel and you've watched some of my other headband videos, you'll know what I'm doing. It's the exact same procedure that I do with all of my knit or stretchy headbands. So there's our little opening, and you can see it's like a muff. I could put, if it was a little bit deeper, I could put my hand through there and right out the other side. But before I turn it right side out, I'm going to trim away about 1/4 inch or 50 millimeters from the seam, just to take away some of the bulk, because that seam is going to be in the middle of the wrong side of the headband once it's turned right side out. So I'm pulling it and trimming and pulling and trimming until I get back to the beginning where my opening will be. And where the opening is, I'm not going to trim. I'll leave that a little bit long just to help close it up. And I've made this fleece headband longer than what I normally do with a stretchy headband fabric because there's so much sewing. So I wanted it almost the size of my head, but it's still a little bit stretchy even with all of this straight stitch sewing. I'm not using a serger for this. So it's very close to my head size, which is 22.5 inches, but it's still smaller, so it'll fit nice and tightly over my ears, but not too tight. And if you find this is too tight, then by all means on your next one, just make it a little bit longer until you find that perfect fit. And of course, all fleece is going to be a little bit different. Some are stretchier than others. This is winter fleece from fabric.com. This particular one I don't find really stretchy, but it is very comfortable. And now I'm going to top stitch. So I'll pick a spot that I think is such, it's a personal choice. So I think it's about 3/4 of an inch or maybe 2 centimeters from the outside edge that I am top stitching. 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch is good. And I'll do it on both edges. All right, and there I have my headband, and it's ready to think about decorating, or it could be just left like this. But I have more of this scrap fleece from cutting, and on the stretch I've just sewn it on. I've put this a little bit off center so you could tie a bow and then trim the ends. And this works with the theme of using these strips on your neck warmer. So there's the bow. I have another button. So now I can do a button, and I can thread those ends through the holes in my button. And if I've decided to decorate my neck warmer with a button, then a matching button on the headband would be really sweet. And I'll just tie it on with a knot and then trim those ends to make a little bow. And that looks nice too. Very nice set. A nice gift for Christmas. And it works with that one too. But let me take the button off now and show you what it looks like if I just tie it in a knot. And the knot becomes a little bow. I mean, you can really play with all sorts of things. You could even use some costume jewelry, or you can make a little flower out of the scrap of fleece. So many ideas, so little time. Oh, I love this too. There's so many great ways that you can finish these headbands and the neck warmers. So have fun with this project, and please consider adding these things to your Christmas list or to your sewing business, and please consider subscribing to this channel. We've just gotten started and we're gonna have lots of fun making all sorts of hats, fashion accessories, and learning about hats, how to wear them, plus of course how to make them. So until we meet again, leave any comments and questions below. Please like the video and subscribe. We'll see you soon. Happy sewing. Bye.